The story does not begin with an arrest or a courtroom, but with a pattern that appears again and again in records, testimonies, and timelines. According to documents, certain investigations do not collapse suddenly. They slow, fragment, and then quietly stop. Files are sealed, names are redacted, leads are marked inactive. What remains is not closure, but an absence. It is in that absence that this trail begins. According to records, Jeffrey Epstein was not an unknown figure operating in isolation. His movements intersected with institutions designed to regulate wealth, enforce law, and protect the vulnerable. Yet, time and again, reports suggest that when scrutiny approached certain thresholds, momentum changed. Questions that once moved forward stalled. Inquiries narrowed. Jurisdictions shifted. Responsibility diffused. Early accounts describe Epstein as a man whose public profile did not match his access. Financial records indicate unusual flows of money. Documents suggest relationships with individuals of influence across politics, finance, academia, and media. According to investigators, such proximity often complicates accountability, not because laws cease to exist, but because enforcement becomes cautious. In the first known complaints, there was no shortage of alarm. According to court filings, young individuals reported abuse, exploitation, and manipulation. The details varied, but patterns appeared consistent. Yet the response was uneven. Some complaints were dismissed, others were reclassified. Several were never formally pursued. Reports suggest that decisions were influenced by jurisdictional uncertainty and prosecutorial discretion. According to records, plea negotiations became a turning point. Rather than expanding the inquiry, the focus narrowed. Charges were limited. Immunities were discussed. Documents indicate that agreements were reached that constrained future prosecutions, not only for Epstein, but potentially for unnamed associates. The language of these agreements, later scrutinized, appeared unusually broad. As years passed, the trail did not vanish. It went dormant. According to journalists who revisited the case, warnings had existed within law enforcement. Internal memos reportedly raised concerns about missed opportunities. Yet those memos did not translate into renewed action. Files remained archived, witnesses dispersed. Time became a shield. Epstein's social presence continued largely uninterrupted. According to flight logs and visitor records, travel remained frequent. Properties in multiple jurisdictions were maintained. The pattern suggested not a man in retreat, but one moving with confidence. Reports indicate that such confidence often signals an expectation of protection, whether formal or informal. The question that emerges repeatedly is not who knew, but when knowledge failed to produce consequence. According to experts, complex cases involving wealth and influence often rely on cooperation across agencies. When that cooperation fractures, accountability weakens. In this case, records suggest a recurring lack of coordination, each agency acting within narrow boundaries. As attention faded, the silence grew. According to victims' advocates, silence is not neutral. It has weight. It preserves structures that allow harm to continue. Yet silence can be institutional, reinforced by legal language, confidentiality clauses, and the quiet power of reputational risk. Years later, renewed scrutiny brought fragments back into view. According to newly unsealed documents, earlier warnings had been more explicit than publicly known. Names appeared in contact lists. Meetings were documented. Financial ties were outlined. Still, documents indicated no direct conclusions, only connections awaiting examination. Media coverage intensified, but even then, the narrative remained constrained. Reports suggest that editorial caution shaped what was published. Legal risks were considered. Allegations were framed carefully. Questions were asked, but often without follow-up. The story advanced, but cautiously, as if aware of invisible boundaries. According to court observers, the reopening of investigations revealed how much time had altered the terrain. Evidence had degraded. Witness memories had faded. Some individuals were no longer reachable. Others declined to speak. The passage of time, once again, narrowed the path forward. Epstein's arrest marked a moment of apparent convergence. According to public statements, authorities framed it as a renewed commitment to accountability. Charges were filed. The narrative shifted toward resolution. Yet, even then, questions lingered about scope. Reports suggested that investigators focused tightly on Epstein himself rather than the broader network implied by earlier records. Then, abruptly, the trail fractured. According to official findings, Epstein's death closed the central case. Investigations shifted tone. Legal proceedings halted. For many observers, this moment represented not an ending, but another rupture. According to records, unresolved questions outnumbered answered ones. Attention turned to what remained: documents, logs, testimonies, and sealed materials. According to legal experts, the death of a defendant does not erase evidence, but it often reduces urgency. Without a central figure, accountability diffuses further. Responsibility becomes abstract. The focus shifted to institutions. How had systems responded? According to oversight reports, procedural failures were acknowledged, but rarely assigned to individuals. Recommendations were issued. Reforms were discussed. Yet, concrete consequences appeared limited. The language of accountability remained general. For victims, the absence of resolution carried lasting impact. According to statements, many sought recognition rather than punishment. They wanted acknowledgement of failures that allowed harm to persist. Some records indicate civil settlements, but settlements by design avoid admissions. They close cases without closing questions. International dimensions further complicated the trail. According to travel records, alleged activities crossed borders. Jurisdictional limits constrained investigations. Cooperation depended on treaties, priorities, and political will. In such environments, cases often fragment, each piece insufficient alone. Financial records suggested additional complexity. According to analysts, tracing wealth through layered entities obscures accountability. Transactions move through trusts, foundations, and intermediaries. Each layer adds distance. By the time questions arise, the trail has already thinned. The role of secrecy emerges repeatedly. Not secrecy as a single act, but as a system. According to researchers, secrecy thrives where transparency threatens stability. It is maintained through legal mechanisms, social norms, and mutual silence. In this case, documents suggest that secrecy was not accidental, but functional. Public interest surged, then receded. According to media metrics, attention spans shortened. New stories replaced old ones. Without sustained pressure, investigations slowed. This pattern, observed in other cases, reflects how visibility influences accountability. Some documents remain sealed. According to court schedules, unsealing processes are slow, contested, and selective. Each release offers fragments, not wholes. Names appear without context without conclusions. The trail continues, but in pieces. The absence of definitive answers fuels speculation, but records caution against certainty. According to investigators, complexity does not imply conspiracy, but it does indicate systemic vulnerability. Where systems fail repeatedly, patterns deserve examination. The question of influence remains central. Influence does not require direct orders. According to sociological studies, it operates through expectation. When individuals anticipate protection, behavior adjusts. Enforcement hesitates. Boundaries blur. In the aftermath, institutions issued statements. According to public records, commitments to review procedures were made. Training was discussed. Oversight mechanisms were proposed. Yet follow-through proved difficult to measure. Without transparency, evaluation remains limited. The trail ends not with a conclusion, but with an accumulation of unresolved intersections. Names that appear briefly, then vanish. Decisions explained procedurally, but not substantively. Silence justified legally, but not morally. According to historians, some cases are defined not by what is known, but by what remains inaccessible. They become reference points for institutional trust. This case occupies such a space. It reflects how power, secrecy, and time interact. The unanswered questions persist. Who intervened, and who merely observed? Which decisions were routine, and which were exceptional? Where responsibility fragmented, and where it concentrated? According to records, these questions remain open. The trail ends where documentation stops, where authority defers, where silence becomes policy. It ends not because there is nothing more to know, but because the structures required to know more did not fully engage. What remains is a record of proximity without consequence, knowledge without resolution, and a silence that continues to shape the narrative long after the files are closed.